Hi, this is Suzanne, and you're listening to Sex Advice for Seniors. One of the constant topics that has come up over the years from all the various channels in which I post is I've been married for 20, 30 years. My wife and I do not have sex anymore. I am really frustrated. Usually, this is from the man's point of view, and although sometimes from the woman as well. And what can I do about it? And I'm not the best person to ask because I had that same situation in my own marriage and I didn't work that out. But my guest today did manage to work it out to the point where she actually wrote a book about it called The Sure Thing. So I am so excited to talk about this topic, as I know so many of our listeners will be. Welcome, Elana, to Sex Advice for Seniors. And tell me, how did this all come about?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Suzanne. It's such a thrill to share.
This week's episode has been sponsored by Oh My Bod, shifting the evolution of pleasure.
I'm 57 myself, and my spouse and I have been practicing for a little over 5 years, this weekly practice that I call The Sure Thing. How it came about was in 2018. So we've been together since 2002. Okay, so we're going on 20 years. We have a kid, and everything was fabulous. And we met in this advanced pleasure course in San Francisco, and it was really hot. We had an open relationship for the first couple years, and you know how it goes. You have the kid, the cosmic coitus just, and then, frustration, the usual struggle, literally 12 years of struggle. So it's 2018. I'm in a car with a friend, and she's a single mom at the time, and we're both Jewish. And she wants to, I learned in Hebrew High that if you have sex on Shabbat, you get the double mitzvah, which is a mitzvah is a good deed. So it's just like building up the good karma. So yes, we love the sex positivity about the Jewish tradition, at least some aspects, some perceptions and perspectives in the Jewish tradition. That's a good thing. And so she wanted to get her double mitzvah and have a consort to explore sacred sexuality on the Sabbath, on Saturday. And I was like, I want that too. That sounds fantastic. Meanwhile, this is like 10 years into this struggle with my spouse. And so it dawned on me, it's a sure thing, a Shabbat unification ritual. And so we had this idea. Then fast forward, meanwhile, there's so much gunk and buildup and resentment between me and my spouse that I'm like, screw you. I'm not going to invite you into this practice. And, the rejection, the different desire levels, all the things were happening in our relationship. And so now fast forward, it's December 2020. And I'm hiking with a friend who is in an open marriage for a long time, and they have a very active sex life, but she was having issues. And so I said, you know what? After you make love in that afterglow, why don't you bring this up with your spouse? And a minute later, I'm like, wait a second, I should do the same thing with this sure thing. And it takes, how sometimes when you tell a friend and you have a sacred witness and you have some accountability. And so I told her by winter solstice, which longest night of the year in the Northern Hemisphere in December, I'm going to do it by then. So I had a deadline. And I did. I invited him in. Our son was at a drum lesson, and we made love. And afterwards I said, hey, baby, what do you think about having a weekly practice of deepening in intimacy, pleasure, and connection? He's like, sounds great. And it started. So we now had this structure. It was no longer, am I interested? Am I in the mood? I don't feel. We have a practice. You show up, and we just show up. Literally, I don't know if it was exactly overnight, but it felt like all of that built up resentment and gunk really disappeared, because now we had this practice where we just showed up on Saturdays normally, because that's when our kid had something going on. And it was about 6 months into this, and it was miraculous for me. So many parts of myself that I had connected with briefly in my 20s or whatever, that was now like coming out. It's like this part of me that I call Vivacious Viv now had this whole canvas in our bedroom to express herself, to make demands, to have desires, to try things we've never tried. And we've been together for all these years. And about 6 months into it, after one of our sure things, and we're high-fiving because it's so simple and it's so wonderful. I said, sweetheart, I think I'm going to have to write a book about this because I just want to share this with people. Everybody has this, we got to share the love. So there you have it. So now 4.5 years later, we have the book.
And it's so funny that you should say this because I haven't done much research here. So my thing is that I schedule sex with a person that I've been seeing for a couple of years generally on a Sunday, because that's when we're both available. And people have always said to me, oh my gosh, that seems so prescriptive. But I think it's so liberating, frankly, because there is something about putting that time in the diary that not only sets you up for pleasure, because you know that that's what's on the agenda, like nothing else. That's what's going to happen in that space of time. But it also helps me, and I don't know if you felt this as an older woman, it helps me to kind of rev up my libido and rev up my arousal because my brain is already starting to go into gear about what's going to happen. And there's something about that that's very intoxicating and also means that I can be super playful because I'm not thinking about the washing that needs to be done or the grocery shopping or anything like that. I mean, was that part of your plan? Like this idea of putting this ritual in every week would give you that space to just explore?
Definitely. Absolutely. It's kind of like this time out of time.
Yeah.
And for the thing about the sure thing practice is you design it. It's personalizable. You set an intention. And so our intention is deepening in intimacy, pleasure, and connection. Of course, anyone can enjoy that intention if that's what they want. Please take it. It's yours. And do we often have sex? Yes. Is there often orgasms? Yes. But it's not required. That's not like we don't have a goal. The goal is fulfilling the intention. And so that then takes the pressure off of like, oh, I got to get it up. Often our sure thing will start with a simple question that one of us will ask the other one, which is, what would be most pleasurable right now? And that could be anything. And that will then take us into, the next question or the next, it just starts it off.
Yeah. And look, you said something that really struck a chord with me, but clearly you were able to move beyond this, which is that you'd had this period of time during which you'd built up a lot of resentment. And so there wasn't this feeling about, I want to be sexual with this person, because there was all this stuff going on in the background. Could have been, child rearing and the demands of that and how imbalanced that often is for so many women. It could have just been stress, whatever. How did you move past that?
Because I focused on what I wanted. I know I love this man. I love him. He actually does a lot of parenting, turns out. So that's more
great.
than me, generally. So that's not happened. That's not the dynamic. It was that, I adore him. I knew I wanted to spend my life with him. And yet I wanted to have a more active sex life and more intimacy, more sexual intimacy with him. And so that's where the struggle came in. And so it was a choice. I feel like I was at this crossroads when I finally decided, because I had been sitting on this for almost 2 years. So this desire, this like tangible practice. And we both meditate every day. And so we know the value of practices. So I had an inkling that he'd be down for it and that it would serve us. And we know how practices support our lives already. Yeah. So it just, was really on that hike when I was just like, enough already. I mean, I can stew about this for another 2 years and be like, oh, he doesn't deserve it. Or I can really focus on, what do I want? What I want is more intimacy, pleasure, and connection with him and with myself. Because that's the other thing I want to tell you, Suzanne, is you don't have to wait for anybody to start a sure thing. if your partner's not ready, if you don't have a partner.
Yeah.
There's the solo sure. There's a whole chapter about having a solo practice. After getting a little frustrated from a few weeks that we missed our sure thing for different reasons, he was out of town, I was not feeling well. And I started getting a little edgy and noticed my tone was a little sharper. It didn't have that edge for a while. And then I thought,
Yeah.
wait a second. Why am I not having a sure thing myself? I don't need him. I have everything I need. I just ask myself, what would be most pleasurable right now? And then lovingly, give that to myself.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing and beautiful. And I also hear that, you and your husband were aligned in quite a lot of ways to start with. So you clearly, as you said, you both meditated together. You actually met on a workshop that sounds like it was quite expansive. You had an open relationship. I'm assuming there was already quite a lot of communication going on in your relationship that made you feel at ease with asking for this.
It's gotten so much better since we've had the sure thing. We've had this
Yeah.
practice. I mean, yes, and there was resentment. There was this, and there was a tone that I
Yeah.
used to use all the time. Like, you stupid effing idiot. Except, not saying it out loud, but the tone was oof. And
Yeah.
so yes, we had a lot aligned, and yes, there was a lot that wasn't matching and that we were missing. And what I found about a year ago, my spouse was sharing some things with me that we've been together for over 20 years that he wasn't sharing, and I knew he would share this with his Zen teacher, for instance, or something.
Yeah.
But he started sharing this stuff with me, and I said, "Honey, I'm really touched, and it really means a lot that you're sharing this with me, and I'm just wondering how come now." And he thought about it for a second and said, "I think it's our sure thing because I just feel so close to you."
Yeah.
So it just continues to amaze me what comes out of just having a simple rhythm, a simple practice, a clear intention.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's not sure. At the beginning, I suspect maybe it felt a bit uncomfortable because you felt disconnected. So, was there a few weeks of settling into this sure thing? Or did it feel like immediately once you'd set the intention that freed something up in you?
Yeah, no,
How
it
did
was
it
a process.
evolve?
And I feel
Yeah.
like, because there were many weeks where it was like, I just wasn't in the mood. I just wasn't
Yeah.
in the mood. And then I read Come As You Are and learned about responsive desire and spontaneous desire. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was a total game changer because
Yeah.
it's like, okay, we can let's just go lie in the bed and hold hands. Let's
Yeah.
just go lie down. Let's just put on some music. We have a sure thing playlist, right? So, and some music that really kind of gets me going. So we'll put
Yes.
that on. I'll take a bath. I'll ask him for a back rub. I'll offer an anointing, with holy oils if he wants to be anointed, and just do something sensual together.
Mm.
And then, and that's it. And so it's not this pressure of, oh, I gotta get my libido going. And what often happens is we start, and the responsive desire, which is based on context, right? And then all of a sudden I'm feeling like, oh yeah, baby, would you, stroke me here? Yeah.
Yeah, I just made a video yesterday about while I'm in Thailand, I've actually rented a little recording studio and I'm making all these videos because I've decided I just want to up my game. And one of the things I talked about was responsive versus spontaneous desire, which comes up a lot in the conversations that I've had. And it's worth, I think, reminding older women especially that responsive desire is about, like you said, some sort of physical context, some sort of contact where the person is. I suppose the thing that I always think of when I think of responsive desire is that we have to trust at this age that our body is going to respond to touch. Because sometimes if we haven't been touched in a while and we're used to that spontaneous desire we had when we were younger, we just assume that we don't have a sex drive anymore. And I think, what you've said, and certainly what I've discovered, is it can be such small things to bring it back, right? Like, touch my shoulders, lie in bed next to me, and let's just cuddle, like kiss the
Mhm.
back of my neck.
Yeah.
We're not talking about massive, like, full on penetrative sex. We're talking about those small little movements and that
Mm.
small contact that we can have with our partner that just gets those wheels turning in our brain again and says,
Right.
oh God, this feels nice. And I think sometimes women don't trust that that's going to actually happen because it hasn't been turned on or activated in so long. They just think it won't matter if he touches me. I'm still not going to be interested. And I
Yeah,
think, what I've heard you say is like, it's those little things. It's those little small things that can make
absolutely.
the most difference.
And it's like, and without having an attachment to where it's going to go, just
Oh,
enjoy
yeah.
like the touch of the neck, right? Or the kiss on your back, and just see if you can just relax and expand into that sensation without having to
Mm.
feel like, oh, am I starting to feel something in my yoni? You know what I mean? It's like, maybe you will, maybe you won't, but just enjoy what that is and let that, the pleasure wash over you and expand and guide you to what you may want next. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we've been so conditioned, with the
Yeah.
Hollywood movies, with the spontaneous, anticipation instead
Yeah.
of letting it naturally arise, within us, that I was in my 50s until I knew about this. So, doing this pleasure practice with my spouse. And so that was really a big key to, realizing that it didn't take so much effort anymore, because it's like, okay, I don't have to be in the mood. It's okay. Just be where I am, but turn towards each other and turn towards pleasure,
Yeah. Yeah.
is really,
Yeah.
that's the game. That's the game I'm playing.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't, it's interesting hearing the way that you talk about it, the vernacular that you use, very similar to what I actually do, but I use completely different vernacular when I talk about the way that I schedule in my sex life, the way that I create some sort of sensual atmosphere, the way that I try and make the whole thing creative often because that works for me. And I like a story, but everybody's different in this sort of thing. But I think, where we're getting to is the same place, which is that it's, putting that time aside for pleasure, whether you're in a casual relationship, whether you're in a committed relationship, or whether you're just in a relationship with yourself,
That's
is
right.
what actually activates and makes us feel, more horny, gives us pleasure, and also is just so good for our body. I mean, I think this is the other thing. Did you discover, because I certainly have, that since I've done this, I just feel happier. I mean,
Yeah.
people
Oh,
people tell me I look better. I'm like, baby, mostly I'm just having a fun time with myself, but occasionally
yeah.
I have a fun time with somebody else as well, and that's good. But
Yeah.
but,
Well, and there's actual research to support how, like, that pleasure is medicine. It's
yeah,
medicine for the body, and obviously for the heart and for the soul, clearly. Yeah. I mean, I feel more energetic. I'm doing things. I mean, I learned to ski. I feel like this practice and
yeah,
connecting with this part of myself that I call vivacious Viv, my wild sensual self. I'm training to be a black belt in Aikido. I mean, I'm only third Q right now, but I'm hoping by the time I'm 60 that I'll be a black belt. I wasn't doing any of this, nothing,
yeah,
before I started this, because it's like I'm discovering parts of myself, and the creativity. It's unbelievable, because
yes,
in the womb, it's that same, you kind of open up that funnel, and then
mm,
whoo, it just, flows forth, is what
yeah.
I'm finding. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you said, it opens up the pathways to be able to communicate better with your partner because there's that space, again, just to be able to relax and to be able to do that. And that your partner chose to share aspects of himself that he hadn't before shows how comfortable that practice has made him feel and how valued he feels, I suspect, as well by doing that regular practice. And
Yeah.
also just how much closer it's brought you all together. I mean, look, there's no downside to doing this. I think that's the thing about all of this, right? Is
Right.
that there's no downside. I know that some people, I spoke to a woman a few months ago who was in a very similar situation and explored reconnecting with her partner using Betty Martin's The Wheel of Consent, which I'm sure that you might be familiar with.
Mhm.
And it was a similar sort of exploration and journey into starting off with she didn't even want him to rub her feet initially. He hadn't touched her in so long and he said, "Can I just rub your feet?" And that's how it started, with just rubbing her feet until eventually they regained their sexual attraction for each other and explored sexual pleasure together, but started off in a really small way. And it was about the two of them acknowledging that they just lost that desire and they both wanted it back. I think often what I hear is that the man is desperately craving intimacy and touch and some sort of closeness with his
Mm,
partner. And he doesn't know how to start the conversation
mm,
without feeling like either he's blaming his partner for not being interested in him or that he's going to be rejected because he's always been rejected. And
right.
so rejection becomes the pattern that he becomes used to. How
Yes.
do you deal with situations where one person is so desperate for that
Mm,
intimacy and the other
mm,
person
mm.
has just forgotten about it completely and is
Yeah.
also sometimes can be quite challenged by even the remote suggestion of getting close?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Well, I know it's very common. And in fact, I was working with a couple recently, similar situation that you speak of. And
Yeah,
it was just, let's have, and so I led an online course last spring, the spring 2025 Sure Thing Challenge. I'm going to do another one this spring. That one was really
mm,
to support me to just finish the book. So get it out in
yeah,
the world. And plus I wanted to get the practice out because we are in such dire and dangerous times. And this
right,
is a real practice that can help us regulate our nervous system and really center ourselves and center what's really true
yeah,
in be embodied, more embodied in ourselves. And so she took the class and she was still resistant. And
yeah,
it was months, and he was the one who was always coming and always asking, and she was not interested, not interested. Also has fibroids and has some discomfort while having penetrative sex, and so a lot of issues that many women struggle with. And
yeah, yeah,
so finally, she just felt like, okay, she wanted some closeness. And so she said, let's just have a practice of hugging each other every day. Let's just have a practice. And they were going to hug each other, and they have a teen daughter as well. And so everybody in the family was going to hug each other. And my friend was like, yeah, but you know what? I'm the one who's always having to remind him. And even though he's the one who's been wanting the sex, right? I said,
yeah,
just be patient. Be patient. You'll see, because this happened with my spouse and I was the one who was like, okay, baby, it's time for our sure thing. It's time for our sure thing. Now he's like, okay, it's sure thing time. What we haven't had, it's our sure thing.
yeah,
In about a week, her spouse started saying, hey, where's our hug? Where's the hug? And then he wanted to add a kiss to it. And by this time, his wife was open to it. So now
yeah,
they have daily hugs and daily kisses. And so I would just encourage people to start with that, just having a daily, whatever it is for you, holding hands, having a hug, touching each other's face, touching, looking into each other's eyes, having a
yeah,
kiss, having a little makeout, but just something that's regular, that feels accessible.
Yeah, yeah.
And trust that it will build, it will grow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I think that's a really, really great suggestion because it's about how you can get started. And often it's the getting started, as you said with that example. That's the key. If you are not willing to get started, then, as I say, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? And
that's right.
so, okay. So you got this book out in the world. Is it out now? Have you got it out now?
Yes, well, it's yeah, February 3rd. February 3rd. You can order it now on Amazon, the ebook. We got a ebook pre-order, and we made it into the Amazon, bestseller in few of the categories. So yay, we're getting it out. And the book is really, I call it a playbook. It's interactive. There's tons of exercises. There's guided visualizations. And the promise is that it will guide you through to have a reliable, ongoing practice that will provide you with sensual fulfillment for as long as you want. And really by the end, going through it, it's ultimately, Suzanne, I believe all of this begins and ends with loving ourselves. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the more I love and accept myself, clearly the more love I'm going to bring into my partnership, into my family, into my community, and the world, of course. And so there's a lot of practices about really falling more deeply in love with ourselves in the book. And so I'm so thrilled. And I feel like it's just a perfect moment to get it out into the world because we need practices that are going to sustain us and have us continue to be resilient and return to kindness and courage because that is really what we need. We need to really amp up the kindness and the courage. Yeah. So,
Oh, yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, you're in the States, so enough said. What
yeah.
a total mess.
Yes. Absolutely total mess. Yes,
But
yes. And what's happening is people are coming together in community and
yeah,
acts of kindness and courage. I mean, that's
yeah,
what is happening. And so that's where we're headed to create the reality that we know is possible, here
yeah.
on this beautiful planet that we all share. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know that a lot of people at the moment are speaking about the local initiatives that are taking place in the States, my son included, who lives there. And it is about kindness. And it is about also, getting back to the short thing about how we can bring that kindness back into our relationships in a much more intentional way and making space for that. And I think that is the fundamental basis of what makes a good relationship is about, creating space for kindness and being intentional in how we show our love for the person that we're with, no matter, the depth of our love for that person. And that's what it's all about. That's what's going
Yeah.
to continue to sustain these long-term relationships because I think, for a lot of people, the kindness is gone. And when the kindness goes, it's very, very difficult to be with the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can be revived because in every moment we have that choice. I have the
Absolutely.
choice to be cranky because he didn't do the dishes when I asked him to, or I could be loving and trust
Yeah.
that the dishes will get done. Is it better
Yeah.
for my nervous system and my frame of mind to just be, okay, I'd rather be accepting of what is instead of,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just knowing we always have these opportunities. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ilana, it's been a delight to speak to you, and I wish you so much luck with the short thing. And we will post a link across all the channels and everywhere so that people can find the book. It sounds wonderful. I'm going to get a copy myself because it really sounds
Yay.
like such a useful guide for everybody, even those of us who are not in a deeply committed relationship, but still with people that we enjoy. So thanks very much for
Absolutely.
coming on Sex Advice for Seniors.
Thanks for having me, Suzanne. So fun.